everybody, welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Taylor Style. You know that time of year where the weather can't make up its mind? You leave the house in the morning and it's still a little chilly, but by lunch it feels like summer, and in the afternoon you're trying to figure out if you're dressed for a client meeting, a patio lunch, or 9 holes after work. Well, that's exactly where Taylor Style is a perfect fit. Taylor is an AI-powered, human-refined menswear rental subscription that helps you look sharp without having to think so hard about what to wear. Their AI learns your fit, your style, your lifestyle. Then real professional stylists help put the clothes together that actually work for your week. So whether you need lightweight professional shirts, comfortable chinos, spring layers, summer-ready polos, shorts for the weekend, or something that can go from the conference room to the golf course, Taylor helps you build a flexible wardrobe without filling your closet with stuff you'll only wear twice. And the best part? No shopping, no laundry, no dry cleaning. You wear the clothes, you send them back, and your next shipment shows up ready to go. I'm a subscriber right now, and every few weeks I get a box with hand-picked outfits chosen by a real stylist, refined by their AI, and the crazy part is they actually nail it most of the time. Stuff I would never go buy, but I end up wearing nonstop just because it works. For busy guys, business owners, sales pros, dads, travelers, honestly anybody who wants to look better but doesn't want to spend Saturday walking around the mall, Taylor Style just makes sense. So check them out at taylor.style, that's Taelor.style, and take 25% off your first month with code EGGS. Once again, head to taylor.style and use promo code EGGS to take 25% off your first month. Taylor Style, look sharp, stay flexible, and let your wardrobe keep up with your life. Now, back to the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. Today's special guest is Tyler Bramlett. He's CEO at WeShape. Thanks so much for joining us, Tyler. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. You know, people love to call me Coach Tyler too, because I'm a coach at heart. So, you know,
I love that.
Feel free, Coach Tyler.
Yeah, well, be careful. Both my boys play football, so we spend a lot of time around coaches, and so everybody becomes coach eventually. So I love that. Yeah. Well, cool, Tyler. Let's talk a little bit about just sort of who you are and where you come from. Obviously, CEO of a fitness brand now, but where'd you come from? How'd you get there?
Yeah, totally, man. As a kid, I grew up in a family that I kind of joke about it. It's not a great joke, but like they thought diet soda was a health food, right? And so I didn't have any inspiration for, how to stay fit, how to take care of myself. And so like a lot of people out there, I took to the magazines. This is before social media, right? To pick and choose on what I needed to follow. And I went after it. I started trying to do the Arnold's, modern encyclopedia of bodybuilding, but I kind of went too far too fast and burned myself out. Then joined a gym and started doing stuff that way. And then ended up actually getting hit by a car. And it was that moment that really changed kind of everything for me, because the fitness industry is really bent on looks, right? And there's nothing that will make you forget about looks faster than feeling like you're in pain. Right? To feel like you can't do anything with your body. And so after that injury, when I came back to the gym, everything hurt. Everything just felt horrible in my body. And, I try to do the leg press, it hurt. I try to do the, bikes or a treadmill or whatever, it hurt. Right. And I quickly realized like, this isn't going to go away. And so, I got a small settlement from that bike versus car accident. And I spent the majority of it traveling around the country, learning from some of the best physical therapists, athletic trainers that I could possibly find, and getting a ton of different certifications. And along the way, I realized some really common themes amongst everybody's training modalities, which specifically would be there's always a progression, right? Progression is like the most important thing when it comes to fitness, and making sure that everybody had something that was unique to them. I think there's a lot of cookie cutter approaches out there, right? So I'll get to this entrepreneur journey here in a sec, because this is what led me to go, okay, I need to be a personal trainer. So I became a personal trainer, quickly realized that most of the personal trainers out there sucked, wanted to disrupt the fitness industry from early on, because I just hated watching people spend, $80 an hour on a trainer who would just put them on a treadmill, run them through some machines, and be staring at their phone texting the entire time. So quickly after that, started a group training program, became the most successful group training program in my hometown here with 4 different locations. Sold it to my partner, decided to go online. I'm going like lightning fast here. Started making products online. Yeah, started making products online, started, sharing this kind of information with people out there. Ended up making pretty big business at the time. We made the Inc. 500 list 3 years in a row, 2015, 16, and 17. And it was cool. I had the Instagram life, Ryan. I had the Instagram life. I was like, I had the successful business. We were making a bunch of money. Everything was going good. And then my wife came to me and she was like, "What are we doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm doing exactly what I set out to do, right? I wanted to have a six pack. I wanted to have a nice car and a nice house and have all these different things." And she's like, "I feel like we're spreading a message that shouldn't be spread." And I'm going to be honest with you. I was really resistant at first about this because the world praises you when you're doing all those things, quote unquote, right. You know what I mean? When you have the success and you have the body and you have the house and the car and all this stuff. But what she was trying to bring to my attention was that the fitness industry is really toxic on people's mental health. And it was because she was just becoming aware of this for the first time that most of the fitness industry's messaging, and I'll be honest with you, this is what I used to do, was, hey, you should hate yourself because you have a jiggly belly or flappy arms or, thunder thighs or whatever. And you should come buy this workout product or this supplement or this diet cookbook or whatever so that you can change the way you look so that you can finally like yourself. And it took me a year or two to really understand what she was saying. And at the time it was hard because I had a big fight with myself, right? Like, I'm already successful. Everything's working. One of the hardest things to do as an entrepreneur is look in the mirror and say, am I actually showing up and serving my purpose here? Or am I showing up and serving myself? Right. And so I know this might be a new message to some people, but I quickly realized that the fitness industry was not serving people. I had a couple daughters at the time too. And one of my daughters started showing some early signs of some body dysmorphia. And I just realized, like, holy crap, like we're not serving the world in a way that's really helpful. And so we did something that most entrepreneurs don't do. We decided to turn all that off. I had an 8-figure business at the time. It was doing great. And we just said, we don't want to do this anymore. And granted, we had the luxury of having some resources to be able to sit down and think, but we asked ourselves a question that was really powerful. This is something I think all entrepreneurs should ask themselves, especially if you're early on. You don't have to do this partway through your journey. Is like, if I got nothing from this, if I got no money, no praise, no nothing from this, what would I want to build? What would I genuinely want to build? Because that's the thing that'll light the fire under you, and that's the thing that's your purpose. That'll give you, that energy to just move forward against all the adversity. And that's when we decided to build WeShape. And the goal with WeShape was, how do we build a product that's so incredible that it puts personal trainers out of business? Right? Like, I want to make sure that we can give everyone a customized routine, teach them how to do it properly, support them along the way, but at scale. And then secondly, how do we build that underneath a brand that says, you're fine just as you are. We're going to teach you how to show up and care for your body instead of hate your body all the way to trying to lose weight and things like that. And let's go serve people in a positive way. Let's set a good example out there. And I would be lying, Ryan, if this has been an easy journey. It was a lot easier to sell, quick fix weight loss supplements and all these different things than it is to sell people on, hey, it takes time. Hey, it's a journey. Hey, but it's worth it. Right. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy to say that, we've grown consistently every year since we launched 4 years ago. And people are just absolutely getting incredible benefits mentally and physically from the program. And I feel really proud of what we've built along the way. So yeah, there's my 50,000 mile views. We can dive in anywhere you want from there.
No, I love that. I think that's great. Well, and I think it's a really good point. I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, but I mean, we're probably contemporary in age. And I know that one of the things that was a big factor for me, like, cause I've always struggled with my weight and all that. And one of the things that was a big factor for me when I was younger was that I grew up with a single mom and we didn't have a ton of money and everything we ate came out of a box. Yeah. And so I ate, for years and years and years, just all kinds of terrible stuff, at least by today's metrics. We look at things and we go, oh, anti-carb and anti this or that.
Yeah,
but
the 80s and 90s
everything was like carbs on
Charms
carbs.
And, right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I mean, even now I still have a lot of nostalgia for some of those terrible things, the rice-a-ronis and the things like this, a cheeseburger mac every now and then, so it's kind of funny because, I think we were set up in such a way that, to your point, and I think you really demonstrated this, like you started chasing Arnold and some of these people who are, the big bodybuilder types. Yeah. And back then, of course, they were doing like really extreme stuff. They're the guys that are eating the raw eggs and doing all this stuff to become, to get enough protein. But like, now it's such a easier deal. But back then when you were trying to find out what was healthy or what wasn't, the joke you made, but I mean, it is true, is the notion that Diet Coke is the healthy alternative versus just like no Coke, or,
Yeah.
and so, but the notion was, well, it's a diet on it, or it says fat free on it, so it must be good, and we've seen numerous, peaks of this stuff over the years.
This is the crazy part, right? You just said something powerful. You said fat free, right? Like, so like, this is the thing about nutrition and health and diet and fitness and everything. These things come in fads and waves. They're cyclical, right? It's like fat free was like the rage, right? That's kind of when I started dieting. I remember going to Costco and looking through all the foods, just looking for foods that were zero fat. And I picked up a bag of gummy worms and I was like, there's zero fat in gummy worms. I can eat all the gummy worms I want and I won't get fat. I mean, obviously, like, this is crazy now that you hear stuff like that. But this is the crazy part about the fitness industry, right? It comes
and it's so funny how much of that has stuck in people's heads. Like even now, like
totally.
I try and follow more of like a ketogenic or what I call like a carbivore diet, or it's like carnivore, but like, with keto on it. So like ketovore, I guess is what I call it. And, cause I still like to have some vegetables and stuff. I can't go full carnivore, but like, when I tell my wife I'm looking for something that, or like I'm not trying to cut the fat out, like instead the fat's fine. It's part of the keto thing and I'm happy to have the fat in there. It's still like kind of triggers that moment. You just hear the word fat and you go, okay, well, fat is bad. And, and all this stuff. And it's like, so it's so funny how just by chasing these trends, we've really altered the sort of the mental state of Americans to the point that, we don't even know what's right. And it's so hard to find good information.
It's so hard. And the wellness industry is so good at chasing the latest headline on some study. And it was crazy to me. You all got to try this now that we have AI. It's so useful. Anytime you watch a social media post or anything like that, and it's got some headline about this is the best way to do things or whatever, go grab that headline, say, find me the study, tell me what actually happened. And you know what's wild? Almost all the time it's going to be like, this study was done on 26 men in their 30s, and here's like the results of it. You're like 26 people, like maybe that's not even relevant to you at all, right? And so these headlines that we see flying around, I think it's just doing us a disservice. And even like the diet industry, like all this stuff, keto, carnivore. I'll be honest, like I'm a big reason why people are doing keto. We sold hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million cookbooks in the keto space when I was back doing this other business and doing all this different marketing stuff. We were pushing the keto diet hard because, at the time it was what the wellness industry was all talking about. But what's funny to me is if that was genuine science, how come the science changes, right? Like right now, you're going to watch this happen, Ryan. This is my prediction. Proteinification is everywhere, right? Everybody's going to be focused on protein. It's like we spent like 20 years on fat. Then we spent 20 years on carbs. Now we're going to spend 20 years on protein. And then in like 2040 or something like that, we're going to go back to fat again, right? And it's just going to be this endless cycle. When the reality is what, right? Like eat foods that agree with your body, right? Make sure you have enough of each thing to give yourself energy. Everybody's a little different. Like I'm a little bit more of a high fat, savory guy. My wife's a little bit more of a low fat type of person. Everybody's body reacts differently to different things. And so it's about finding what works for you. And the only way to find what works for you is not to pay attention to what somebody else says you should do, but to pay attention to what your body's telling you is actually working, right? So that's the key, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think one of the other things to be aware of, and I can only just say this because I do it myself, which is a lot of times I think people chase these fads sort of looking for the not get rich quick, but sort of the instant gratification. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to lose weight. They feel bad about themselves. They're not happy with where they are or whatever. And it's like, how do I solve this problem today? Like, I don't want to worry about what I'm going to do for the next year, but like, what can I go do today? So they find these trends and they find these different things. Keto got really popular initially for that because a lot of people are like, oh, you can just drop weight so quickly and, all that stuff. So people started really going for that because, oh my God, and now to your point, like, I mean, I have some family members that are working on their fitness and, protein is the thing. Oh yeah, you got to have a gram for every pound you want to be and all these kinds of things. There's all these metrics out there that people are chasing now. And I don't know, for me, it's really hard to eat that much protein in a day. Like I don't feel that good if I eat that much. And, so I just don't, I don't love it for me. So to your point, it's really important to, I guess kind of, listen to what works for your body and not necessarily chase the trends. But what I wanted to get into initially before I derailed us was talking about just sort of the I guess, first of all, the wherewithal to decide to change your mindset from the way that sort of traditional fitness is. And you see this with some other companies, like Planet Fitness has worked really hard to work against sort of, whatever you want to call gym bullying or gym culture, and that kind of thing. And, I mean, there's people who are taking shots at trying to do this, but there's so much psychological baggage racked up in around our bodies and the way that we think about ourselves and even just around food in general and stuff like that. There's all this energy everywhere. So it's made it really hard for people to even find their way. So I wanted to talk to you about, like, I guess maybe the psychological aspects, what is it these companies are playing on? So maybe we can be aware of it. One factor in particular, that came to mind immediately was this notion of the negative inner voice, which is sort of, people say it's, it could be the voice of your mother or whomever in your head that said something terrible to you when you were a child, and now it's stuck. And then when you hear these things, you're kind of triggered in these different ways. But I'm in the process of writing a book on overcoming these little moments, these kind of, I think it's largely fear-based stuff where, even to enter the gym or to see yourself as the person who goes to the gym is a bridge too far for a lot of people. And so they stay out of the gym, and it's not because of laziness or whatever, but it's because they just don't see themselves as the kind of person who could go do that. And I think to your earlier point, gym marketing really, I guess, sort of fueled that. So if you didn't have that kind of attitude or that personality that was going to be really driven by, oh man, I got to go get jacked for the ladies or whatever. Like if you didn't have that kind of approach, like the gym became really unapproachable for you. And you're like, well, I'm not the kind of guy that goes to there. That's not for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's kept a lot of people out of fitness more generally than might have done it otherwise. And so I wonder if you just talk a little bit about sort of the psychology that gyms were playing on sort of in the traditional model and, and still do, by the way. I mean, it's not gone. And then, in your guys' pivot, what you're doing to sort of, I guess, help move people through that hurdle. You described a couple things quickly, but maybe we can dig into that a little bit.
And I feel like you sniffed some of what we do out already. So, I'm happy to touch on that because, here's the reality. Like, why did I make that shift as an entrepreneur when everything was going my way? I don't know about you, Ryan, but I think we all just chase being happy, right? And happiness, we often think comes in a great car, a big bank account, or six-pack abs. And that was my journey, man. I first thing I did is I got out of high school, I tried to become a rock star. I played drums for years and tried to chase fame. And then I tried to use drugs to make myself feel happy. And then I tried to become successful and fit. And like every single thing I did, I thought would make me feel happy. And every single thing I achieved made me want to just achieve more. I was stuck on what people call that hedonic treadmill. And I know it's hard for people to understand how negative this can be because oftentimes people have that hope that a big bank account, a great car, the body, the wife, the whatever is going to make you happy. But I'm here to tell you it didn't, right? Like I bought my dream car in 2017 and I never forget driving it up to my beach house, feeling super proud of myself after I bought it. And I turned it off. And I went, oh, fuck, I'm still empty inside. Like I want more. There's like a big gaping hole that just needs to be filled. And this was right around that time. My wife brought this awareness to me that like the fitness industry is built on basically playing on shame and insecurity, just making you feel like shit about yourself. So you'll end up buying their products or doing their programs. Right. And I had to go on a long 5+ year journey of self-work to realize that the reason why I was trying to achieve in the first place was all rooted in insecurity, right? It was rooted in the insecurity of being an overweight kid and being made fun of my life. It was rooted in the insecurity of growing up in a family that didn't have a lot of resources and feeling like I wanted to prove to somebody that I'll be able to do this, right? It was always just rooted in my own insecurity. And so many businesses, especially the wellness industry, like that's the game they're playing. The game they're playing is you should feel crappy about yourself. Like literally, Liz, you'll pay attention to it. When you're out on social media, like there's not a lot of empowering people that don't say you're not good unless you're this, right? What we really want, if you want to be happy, is not stuff outside of you to make you happy. It's you. It's your choice to feel happy within. If you depend on stuff outside of you to make you feel happy, you will always be chasing something. And you will always feel like there's a hole inside. If you can work on the inner game, you can have nothing You cannot have the body. You cannot have the bank account. You can be struggling, but you can still feel happy, right? And so that was the reality I started to recognize. Is when my wife brought this to me, I was like, wait a second. I know so many people in the fitness industry. Are they happy? Are they healthy, like mentally, right? Physically? Or are they torturing themselves every day to try and stay lean, never eating what they want, never enjoying themselves, like having to like be so strict? And then on the inside, that inner critic, is their inner critic like, wow, I'm so proud of you and I love the body you've built? Or is it like, a little bit more, you have to keep this up and blah, 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 right? And what I realized was that, I was one of these people who tortured themselves enough on the inside that I got the results that everybody wanted on the outside, right? And there's a lot of people who are influencers who this is the experience they've had. The inner critic is so mean. They're just like, you pussy, you piece of shit, you have to do this and you have to stay strict and you have to, and that works for them. And they become popular because of this. And then a normal person sees that person and goes, well, obviously I have to shame myself and criticize myself into getting there. But what actually happens to 99.99% of the population is this. They start rehearsing shame and criticism and self-judgment. They get started with that shame and criticism and self-judgment fueling their motivation. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they call themselves a failure and they quit and they never end up getting anywhere. And so then their conclusion at the end of that is what? I didn't hate myself enough. I got to try again, this time harder, And so what I'm trying to highlight here, Ryan, is the people who are like using that criticism and negativity to fuel themselves, like that's all insecurity. And they're the people who have done it so hard that they've succeeded in it. But most people are going to do it less hard and they're just going to become that self-fulfilling prophecy. They're just going to hate themselves, right? And on top of all this, you know what? It's crazy. I've helped hundreds of people lose hundreds of pounds. Like, when somebody loses 100 pounds, the physical transformation you see is gigantic. But here's what really hit me. When my wife brought this to my attention and we started reflecting on it, we still kept going for a year or two in that same direction. I would talk to people who had lost 100 pounds. And the thought in my head would be, you must be so happy. You must be so happy. And they'd be like, yeah, I'm so happy. And like, well, this part of me is next. And this part of me is next, right? And so it's like, if all you do is rehearse self-criticism for a year or 2 years to get to your end goal, do you think at the end of that 2 years, you're going to have self-love? That's not how the brain works, right? Nerves that fire together, wire together. What we repeat is what we become. So if all we do is we repeat criticism, then we're going to be at the end of it, we're just going to criticize ourselves constantly. And so that's the work.
It's crazy. And, it's interesting to me because so in doing this research for this book that I'm doing, we had a guy on the podcast, this dude named Bob Berg. He's famous for a book called The Go Giver. And his whole thing is basically, give more of yourself than you want to receive or whatever. And it'll kind of work itself out. So it kind of plays into the kind of business that you've built here, which is you turned into something that gives more than it takes. And as a result, you're doing well, so, it's kind of fulfilling that go-giver philosophy. But when we had him on, I was talking to him about my own mental hangups and these things that I run into. And I always talk about this thing, and this is the topic of the book, is I talk about this thing called the lid, which is this sort of, for me, it's this invisible barrier that sort of keeps me from getting to the next step. And that could be weight loss. It could be entrepreneurial. It could be whatever. And it's like, I can see it. It's through this clear membrane over here, but for whatever reason, I can't push through it. And so he introduced me to this book called Psycho-Cybernetics by this guy, Maxwell Maltz.
That's a classic.
And but one of the things in that just, got me thinking based on what you just said is this guy, Maxwell Maltz, was a plastic surgeon, and he would do all this work for these people and, people who had been disfigured in accidents or maybe born with a disability or whatever. He'd work on these folks. And then what he would find is that most of the time, even after the surgery, they weren't fixed. He expected kind of like what you were describing in their bodies, which is, hey, I lost 100 pounds. But instead of being thrilled to death, it's still not enough. It's still not whatever. It's still, and it doesn't actually fix it, because the problem actually was when they were a child, somebody said something to them, or they were bullied, like in your example, or, whatever it was. And so it's like, so the superficial, or sort of that quick fix that we try and apply to things to feel better and to chase that happiness, to your point, doesn't appear anyway, at least in his book, it's anecdotal, but there's a lot of research that supports this. There's a gap that happens there where people just, we do the thing to try and chase that happiness, like you said, and we look for it outside of ourselves instead of inside ourselves. And That's why there's so many unhappy trust fund kids and things like this, that you hear about all the time, or child actors and, these kinds of things, these people who are given great wealth or great opportunity at an age where they're not ready to handle it. But there's all this emotional baggage that actually keeps them from moving forward. So, and I will say too, not to totally demonize the wellness industry. Obviously a lot of industries tap into these things for, marketing purposes and stuff like that. So, so it's really cool, I think, that you decided to turn around the way that you guys were messaging. But so what I wanted to pivot into from there then is just talking about taking risks in business, because obviously you were already doing well. You already had, by your accounting, you had a 8-figure business. Things were going pretty well, happy, healthy, good family. You got all the stuff, right? You checked all the boxes. So, and then you said, you know what, let's just go ahead and risk this business on this new direction. And I think it's great that you encountered, or, through your spouse, you were able to get to a different idea or another way of thinking about this. But I think it still takes a lot of risk just from like a practical standpoint. And you've got people that work for you and you own whatever infrastructure you own and all that kind of stuff. You had to still go, no, I'm good with rolling the dice on this and we'll see what happens. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that, just from like the entrepreneurial perspective, because I think a lot of people get stuck going a direction. And the fear of moving or changing places is, a real challenge for them to overcome in business. In our case, for example, we just pivoted into med tech the first year with our med tech consultancy / marketing kind of agency thing that we've got. But we were an all-purpose, ad agency for 20 years, but we decided to make this pivot. But it took us a long time, and it was probably a few years in the making before, even in my own business, I was brave enough to kind of take the corner and just, okay, we're going to cut off everybody but med tech and let's see how it goes, but those kind of moves take, courage, and it's not easy necessarily to do that. And it sounds like you're at a bigger scale than we were, so it's probably even a bigger risk, really. So I wonder if you just talk about sort of, first of all, we've heard how you got the notion in your head, but what does that pivot look like as you start to turn your business into something that's more focused on this sort of holistic approach to wellness versus sort of the traditional business as usual kind of model?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I wish I could say that I would give advice to people to do what I did. And I don't know if I would. I would definitely do things differently. And that's part of building challenging things, I think, is often you talk to entrepreneurs that have built challenging things, and they say, I'm really happy I didn't know how hard this was going to be, because if I had, I probably would have never built it. Right. So that's definitely the circumstance here in both two ways. Right. One, the product that we built is highly technical. We put millions of dollars into basically building like an AI coaching infrastructure before the AI craze even started. Right. I was pitching people raising capital for this back when crypto was the hot craze, and everybody's like, AI, nobody cares, right? And then a year later, everybody started talking about AI. So it definitely is hard. It was really challenging, but the risks are a part of being an entrepreneur. We all know that, right? And to me, the risk wasn't so much about like financial at the time. It certainly sucked up way more money and energy and put me in way different places and created more hardships than I ever had thought, honestly. But the risk was kind of for my soul at the end of the day. Because for me, it was like, once I see something, I can't unsee it. And again, I come back to, my wife telling me, but the bigger thing that really forced me to not be able to unsee it was my daughter. When she started showing those signs of just body dysmorphia, she had a little bit of an eating disorder precursor. I was realizing that like my quote unquote discipline that I was trying to pass on to my kids was actually just harming them. And that was a moment where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to contribute to this world. I want to contribute to a different world. So I couldn't unsee it. So for me, the risk wasn't really like, I'm worried about the business. It was like, I can't have my kids grow up in a world where I'm the guy who did all this to them. You know what I mean? So it's like a choiceless choice. I wish I could say it was, something that I felt like I had choice over, but I just really absolutely had to go that route. But as far as the risk goes, first of all, if you're an entrepreneur and you're young and you don't have a big old monthly nut that you have to spend on, your house and your cars and all this stuff, like take risks, man. That is the time to just get after it, take risks, live small, think big, get after it. Right. I had a different story. I was living big and taking big risks at the time, which has been at moments significantly, I think, more stressful than back in the day when I first started these businesses and just had to grind it out. And, I was able to get by on a whole lot less. But here's the reality. Oftentimes, most people build a business that has like very little longevity and very little thought on like what the brand is actually going to do. They'll build something, they'll chase money, they'll try to go after, what works, but they're not thinking to themselves, like, what's the problem I want to solve in the world? And that's why I always go back to encouraging people, like the risk you're going to take is going to come from answering the question, what is it that I really want to build? What is the problem I really want to solve? And how can I do that better than anybody else? Not just how can I do that like other people, but how can I do that better than anybody else? Because to me, we built workout programs and cookbooks and supplements, but they would burn and churn, right? It's like any business that's doing, leaning heavy on the marketing side of things and not heavy on product and brand, you're going to end up burning and churning a lot. You're going to get something that hits for a few years and then it falls apart and you're going to repeat like that. When it came to WeShape, it was like, we know what we want to do. We know the brand we want to build. We know the product we want to build. And not only is it just benefiting people more, just subjectively hearing what they're saying and the results and the testimonials and people genuinely finding like happiness and healthiness in their bodies, but like the numbers back this up, right? This is why you should take risks and build something great, not good. Because if you build something great, people stay. They tell their friends. They tell everybody about it. They want to be a part of it, right? If you build something good, they might use it, but they don't really talk about it. It's not going to be like a center point of their lives. So when we built this, we wanted it to be transformative in so many ways. And I think that just building something that big in your, with that big of a goal forces you to take risks, forces you to think big, forces you to step outside the box, and forces you to push yourself to grow. Because at the end of the day, you're going to see whether you're succeeding or not in the way people are talking about your business and in the numbers, right? Then are they coming back? Are they buying? Are they staying here? Are they, watching your social media videos? Are they like, are they sharing your ads with their friends? You know what I mean? Like that's the type of stuff that you can consider as a huge win, is when people are commenting on your ads, like, thank you so much for this advertisement, or getting off a sales call with you and being like, I'm so grateful I just signed up for this because I feel like I was able to hand my burdens off to you, right? We want that good feeling across the board. And that only comes from immense amounts of effort in how do I serve people and how do I do that better than anybody else? So, and that's inherently risky at the end of the day,
Yeah, no, it's funny. And I'm feeling like a theme emerging as we're talking here, which, I was talking about it earlier in the frame of trying to lose weight or chasing trends or whatever around diet, where it was sort of this notion of instant gratification. And I think there are a lot of businesses built on this too, which is, to your point, it's it's strictly marketing. It's just, catching a trend or a wave or whatever and moving a bunch of product, but then they fizzle and burn. You see this a lot, in your own industry, which is, gyms coming and going, trainers coming and going. A lot of people get into it for that quick thing. Hey, I'm in decent shape. Maybe I could get some people to work with me and I could start a gym or whatever. Like there's some people that do that stuff, but, to your point, they're not thinking about the long-term vision. And I've been thinking about this a lot with AI in particular, because there's so much in the conversation going on around, well, what does this mean for people in the future and stuff like that. But you just hit on the thing that is exactly what I think will actually end up happening with AI, which is actually will revert back to people. And I think that focusing on relationships and building, real authentic relationships with our customers is going to end up being the thing. In a world where everything is so fast-paced and moving quick. And it doesn't mean AI won't make us more intelligent or give us access to information. I think it's going to be an incredible tool for us. But if you focus your business, like you said, on longevity versus instant gratification, you're really trying to build something meaningful. You actually give a crap if your customers like it or don't, which is, a departure from a lot of these marketing-driven companies. And you're trying to, really build something that's relationship-based and I guess gives as much as it gets. You'll start to see those examples that you were giving with your customers where they're talking, good things about you or they're sharing your ads, and I think that is an indicator of probably where things are kind of going, which is, I think we're going to want tangible relationships with people when the rest of the world is automated. And so I think the businesses that survive this wave, whatever this is going to be, are going to be the ones that leverage AI as a tool, and the ones that have figured out how to do that in combination with, being actually valuable to the people who work with them.
I love that you're saying this, Ryan. I had a conversation with our team about a month ago about this. So one of our core values is we care, right? And I I think a lot of businesses have core values that they don't stand behind. So I always try to tell people, when you're developing your core values, the question that you're answering is, how do we behave? How do we behave? Those are your core values. And if people don't behave like that within your core values, you have to be willing to fire someone against that. And so that's why core values exist. I know that's hard. I remember being an entrepreneur, by the way, and being stressed about getting like a fictitious business name. So like if you're way starter in the journey, just know that it just expands. And it's like, mission and values and stuff at first can feel like, oh my God, I just need to make like $1,000. You know what I mean? And I get how that feels. But at some point when you're starting to build a team and an organization and a brand, that's when it starts to really matter. So we care is our first and most important core value. We've had that for a long time. And I always look for the stories that people are, commenting or posting, or videos or they're sending us and stuff like that show that they genuinely had an interaction, that we care. And while this is really important, something that we've leaned into is exactly what you're saying, Ryan. The cost of knowledge is quickly dropping to zero. And so if the cost of knowledge is zero, what is the value of any business that's service related? It's not the knowledge, it's the trust. It's the care that you provide in that relationship. And so, I tell the team all the time, like, what I want to be the brand that people trust. I want to be the brand that when someone comes to us and we have an opportunity to either, okay, we can tell this person something that we don't believe is true and make a bunch of money, or we can tell this person the absolute truth and send them on some other journey because we're not the right fit for them. I want to tell them the damn truth every single time. Because every single time I tell the truth, and especially if I tell the truth in a way that doesn't serve me, I'm building trust, right? I'm building trust because they know I've got their interest at heart, not my interest at heart. And I think that's the hardest part about entrepreneurship that I really want to change. I think we have to inspire people to show up from a place of, how do I serve you, not how do I serve me? And I don't know about you, but I've met thousands of entrepreneurs where the whole game is, how do I serve me? How do I serve me? How do I serve me? They're looking at the data, they're looking at the statistics, and they're just trying to optimize for every single dollar being maximized. And while that is important to have optimization and to look at data and be a math wizard inside business, it's also important that at the end of that, is that optimization serving just the dollars that you're getting, or is it serving the results that you're providing others? Because if you zoom out, I promise you, the results you're offering those people, the care, the trust that you're giving those people, that's going to be your lifetime value going sky high, versus like your snapshot that you're optimizing, which is usually, the first 90 days or maybe a year, right? But what about the 10-year outlook? One of the things I really love to look at now, Ryan, is people who sign up for WeShape. They stay for like a year or something like that. Life gets in the way, they cancel, whatever. They go do some other fitness programs and they come back. That's what I love to see. I love to see the people who come back. And then they jump on a live call with me or some of the other coaches. And they're like, I tried these other things, but I realized that all they were doing was giving me the wrong stuff for my body. They weren't focusing on what I really needed. And they were trying to constantly use shame and criticism to motivate me to take action. But you guys don't do that. I feel safe here. And if you can cultivate that feeling of safety and trust for people, that's what's going to set you apart in the AI age. So everyone who has a brand, and don't bullshit this, right? Do it from the heart. Do it with purpose. Do it with the goal of serving others. And that's a hard thing to overcome if you're bent on serving yourself. I get it. I've been there. I've been in the position of me. How much can I make? How big can I grow this? And then being like, wow, I'm empty, right? I'm constantly empty inside, even though my life looks full on the outside. The only way you're going to feel fulfilled is A, if you work on being happy with yourself, and B, you start offering that service and care to others in a way that feels good to you. Yeah,
I love that. Well, it's funny. We have a saying on this show. There's notion of a 10-year overnight success. And, when we sit down and we sit and visit with CEOs and leaders like yourself, we're looking at the picture of you today that seems to be doing pretty well. You've got an established business, all that stuff. And here you are, you've made it. So it'd be really easy to be caught up in, oh man, I'm jealous about what Coach Tyler's doing today. How come I can't get my business to there? All that. It's really easy to get wrapped up in that story. But the notion is everything we've been talking about, right? The last 10 years of getting here and how you ended up in this location versus where that other business might have taken you, and, all these different things, So, it's really important to focus on that. And so to your point earlier about just sort of entrepreneurs and trying to figure out their mission and trying to lead with values and things like that, I think some aspect of entrepreneurship is it almost requires the long game to be really good at it. And what I mean is that this 10-year overnight success idea, or what I sometimes call the layer cake, which is this idea that basically there's not a wrong way to go. And like, you probably wouldn't have gotten to where you were today if you didn't do what you did before.
That's right.
And so like, there wasn't a way for you to just begin this journey and start right where you are today. Instead, you had to start as, you know, a young man with some, you know, psychological damage you were working through. And, you know, like, you needed all those steps to be in place in order to get here. And so I think it's one thing, I think it's kind of a disservice, and maybe it's just self-serving for me because I haven't ever been very good at like sort of documenting the mission statement and these kinds of things. But I think that gets put really early in business development. Like, if you're just reading a textbook totally. And it tells you how to start a company, it's like, oh, okay, well, you need a mission and values, you know, before you can do anything, you need that. But I think for a lot of people, the reality is you actually grow into that. You know, so like in your case, for example, like, you couldn't have started with We Care, or if you had said that before,
it would have been bullshit.
It would have just, it would have been just lip service, right? Hey, I'm just saying we care because, oh, well, people love it that we care, you know, but it's like, but no. Now it actually makes sense because you grew into that role. And so now you can say it authentically and you actually act against it. And so, but I think that for a lot of people, they just write these words down, or, you know, these little catchphrases or whatever it is they've Googled, or now they're just having AI write. And it doesn't really mean anything at all. And I think especially in the startup world, you know, especially among these young companies, I mean, they really don't know that they have 10 years. They don't know that they have 5, you know, they don't know they have 6 months, let alone 10 years. So I think the impulse is to act really short term. Think about it in a way like, how can we get the big wins quick and just, you know, start getting money in the bank? And I think that actually is in the way of what they'll end up doing long term. And you see this in a lot of these huge companies that ended up going on, you know, becoming giant. I mean, some of it was they had a good service or they had something that would scale quickly, but that will fizzle and burn if they don't start doing the rest. And so it's really important that they do all that stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about that sort of, but in the frame of your business growth and how you're scaling the company now. You said you guys are, you know, experiencing positive growth. Things seem to be going pretty well. But one of the big challenges for people, of course, is hiring and trying to staff in a way that can allow their business to grow. And when you do have real live, developed over time, iron tested, you know, philosophies about the way you run your business, or these core ethics, like things like We Care, how do you scale a business and keep that stuff alive? Like, how are you, is it the people you're hiring, they need to buy in from the beginning? Like, what are the things that you're having to impose to sort of keep that, I guess, culture of the business? I hate calling it culture because that became one of those buzzy terms, but but that feeling or that vibe, that energy in your company, how do you scale that without sacrificing, you know, I guess, any of the actual value of that stuff?
Yeah, no, such a fantastic question. And, you know, just going back to the journey and the risk real quick, like, I wish I could say this has been easy, but it was like, oh my God, this has been so much harder than I could have ever imagined. You know, like, I had to sell a bunch of assets. I had to face all these different hurdles, and only to build a business now that's still not nearly as successful or profitable as the ones that I've had a decade ago, but it's on the path. And it's got the lasting nature to it that the other businesses didn't, right? And that's what I get really excited about, is seeing that we're building something truly unique and truly valuable, and something that I'm willing, like you said, to chip away on for 10, 15 years, 20 years, whatever I have to, because it lights me up. It makes me feel happy about what I get to do every day. So yeah, I do think that when you're an early entrepreneur, like, just going through the motions and building some stuff and failing a lot, it's so critical because you learn so much along the way. But at some point you have to pause and you have to ask yourself that question, like, what's my purpose? Like, what is the purpose of this? What is the mission? Why am I going to show up and happily serve somebody? And then the bigger question, again, I keep coming back to this for everybody, is like, what would I do for free? Like, that is such a clarifying question, because if you wouldn't do it for free, you don't love it. You don't deeply love it. And when you're tackling really challenging things and you're trying to do so in a way where you're building something great, you will encounter hardships that are debilitating. Like, I'm just like, the things I used to think were hard in the past and the things I think are hard now are like not even in the same ballpark, right? And so it's so important for, I think, people to answer that question, what would I do for free? Because that gives you the opportunity to show up and stick with it, because great things take a long time, right? When it comes to scaling this up, I wish I could say that it was all about scaling up. But what happened for us was we had a team that was building these other fitness businesses that were kind of gung-ho behind us, and we shut it down and said, we're going to pivot. We're going to pivot and we're going to build a new business. We're going to do something different. And for the first, I would say 2 or so years of us kind of winding that old one down and starting this new one and getting the product off the ground, there was this process of recognizing that some people were here for like the gung-ho, let's make some money type job. And some people really wanted to serve a greater purpose. And I think the most important thing is to clarify, again, those values that you live by, that you will hire and fire by. Because if you don't know that, then you'll let somebody stay within the business that shouldn't be there. And I'll tell you straight up, man, like having, say you have 20, 30 people working for you. If you have one person in there that's a bad apple, they will spoil the whole bunch. Like one person will spoil the whole bunch. And so you have to be super, super, super diligent about making sure that everyone there is sharing the vision, sharing the core values, and sharing the mission that you're trying to serve, because it's what makes things run really smoothly. So for us, it was cutting away the people that didn't work there. And at times we'd lose a key player, right? Like we lost our CTO at one point. Almost, I think we were just at the end of the build of the initial product phase. And again, our product is highly technically advanced. And finding a new CTO, oh my God, it was a stroke of luck. My wife and I, we built this together. So she was the one handling the ops side of things. So she just went to town trying to find CTOs. And it was so hard because, I mean, if you're trying to find a really great CTO right now, we got one guy, we took him through all the interview process. Everything's looking good. We had everything lined up. He was going to do a big equity play, still a huge salary too. Amazon offers him $750,000. Jesus Christ, I can't keep up with that, right? Like, I can't. And like, so we ended up finding somebody who was fantastic and in a record amount of time. But when we bring somebody in, the first thing I want to do is I want to pass them against the core values. I don't care about your skills unless I care that I know that you care about what we believe in here, right? And so for me, like I can look at stuff right on my laptop. I see my values here. Like we care, that's the most important one. Does someone actually care about this, what I'm trying to solve here? If they do, they're going to show up in the hard times just like I am. You know what I mean? And then there's some other frameworks that we operate on. We are intentional, we seek improvement, we accept joy, we take care of ourselves. Okay. So if somebody's not taking care of themselves, they're not going to be example to the people that we serve. So like, I want people who are here practicing what we preach, right? When it comes to seeking improvement, I am such a nerd I might have pushed that off earlier, but I'm such a nerd when it comes to data and optimization. So we have a framework I use called GTMD, guess, test, measure, decide. So I want to attract the nerds. I want to attract the people who go, you know what, I'm willing to look at my work that I'm doing, ask myself, how can I try doing it better, measure my result, and then see if I nailed it on my optimization or not. So we're constantly trying to optimize the experience for ourselves, our workflows, the experience for our customers, whatever it is inside the business. And then being intentional, right? Valuing our time. And one of the things I had a mentor early on that I loved, he said, most entrepreneurs are not lazy enough. And I know that sounds really weird, but at first you're like, what does this mean? I got to grind, I got to push. But what he's saying is if there's anything that you're doing that could be automated or delegated or eliminated, like eliminate it, right? So many entrepreneurs get caught up in like, here's the 20 things I got to do to be successful. And if you look at it, there's probably like 3 on there that'll really drive the needle super far. And the other 17 are just distracting you from those 3. And probably like 5, 6, 7, 8 of them probably don't even need to be done. And the rest of them, you could probably have somebody doing it at 80% for, not that much. You know what I mean? So I really want people who come in who are bought into the goal at the end of the day, that are taking care of themselves, but who also have a little bit of like a desire to optimize and improve, and a desire to be really intentional with their time, right? Nothing makes me happier than when somebody on my team comes back and goes, "Oh, I found a new way to automate this thing that I was doing, and now it functions, without me," right? It's like, that makes me so happy. And then how do we keep this going forward? We bring it up over and over again. Every week when we're in our weekly meetings, we're looking for opportunities to share when our customers communicated with us that we cared for them, right? And sometimes it's like, hey, I couldn't like log into the app because of this version wasn't up to date, and I emailed your CS team, and then somebody on your tech team like updated the app for me, and then boom. So then all of a sudden, like somebody who's a dev who would never get that kind of feedback is getting that feedback, right? And so how do we bring that to the forefront? And then we do quarterly focus. Every quarter, we're focusing on one of these core values. We're doing homework on it, right? Whether that's like, I want you to go out there and find a way to make an impact on one of our customers' lives in a way that they feel cared for, right? Somebody go out, just any ideas and do that, bring it back. And then we do a share. Everybody comes and goes, here's the project I did. Right now we're in a phase of we are intentional, which is, again, we use a framework called DEAL: define, eliminate, automate, and liberate your time. DEAL: define, automate, liberate. Define, eliminate, automate, liberate. And so right now our goal is like, everybody here's got to bring one workflow that they've automated with AI, right? You've got to take something that you've done that's not like your most creative work, that's not like this customer facing important stuff, and just automate it, right? And so we'll do that every single quarter, and we'll cycle through these just to bring them to the forefront over and over again, so that we're constantly thinking about it. And then even like bare minimum, right? Okay, here's something I did recently. I realized I would even go through the core values and I'd make a slip on one of these frameworks or whatever that we want to use. I don't memorize everything. I'm like, why don't I have a sticker on everybody's laptop right next to their mouse pad that says these core, like, you got to put it in front of like that, which, when we see it every day, that's when we actually do it. Right. So I try to put it in front of everybody's eyes too. So they're constantly thinking like, how do I make sure I'm living this way? But all of that starts with you getting clear on yourself, right? You getting clear on what's important to you, how you want to run your business. And some of this stuff, like you said, Ryan, this is stuff that came with time. So I don't think having, 5 core values, or like, if you can't integrate one, you got no business integrating 2. So if you're going to get started and you're going to try to make this happen, like, pick the one that matters to you, the one that you hire and fire against, the one that you do naturally, the one that just measures how you would naturally behave. Stick that everywhere. Bring it into the forefront of your meetings, hire and fire against it, talk about it, do it every single day. And then when that feels good, add another one, right? Don't have to do 3 to 5 core values and write your mission statement in this way. Like you're saying, it's just a lot of that stuff is just becomes lip service instead of something that's useful early on.
Well, and I love that take, because I think it kind of goes back to what we've been saying, which is just, everything takes time, whether that's weight loss or getting your head right or whatever it is. Like, everything takes time. So this notion that you have to have it all solved on day one is probably not that realistic and adds a lot of undue pressure, I think.
It's the opposite. The paralysis analysis slows people down. I'm like, yes, we want to solve big problems. Yes, we want to build excellent products. Yes, we want to have incredible core values. But like, if we try to figure it all out before we get started, we'll never get started, right? So the first step is like, do something, right? And if you're just an idea person right now, you know what the best thing you can do is? Go talk to people. Hey, I have this idea. Does this sound good? What would you do differently? Right? Just start talking to people and writing down their ideas. Build a MVP prototype, right? Build a prototype of it. Get started. Get people's feedback on it. People don't understand that all these businesses you see that are hyperscaled, the Netflixes and the Chat GPTs and everything like that, this wasn't just some guy's idea sitting in a room that he built. This was something where they built an MVP, they tested it, they got people's feedback, and they constantly iterated it, to make it better. So get the baseline going and then improve. That's what makes a business great, is the vision that you want to build something big and solve a big problem. But that you don't have to do it right now. Start with just small amounts of people and get that momentum and build from there.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. And I think it helps kind of take some of the pressure off entrepreneurs too. They feel like they need to be accomplishing so much, or getting so much money, or so much, raising so much capital, or whatever it is that's their thing. They spend so much time trying to, I guess, sort of compete against social media and try and, live up to some metric that's maybe not realistic for them, that they end up putting all kinds of crazy pressure on themselves and making, maybe some of the kind of steps that you were talking about before early on in your career, where you were kind of, maybe it wasn't, I don't want to call it not ethical, because it's not that, but maybe it's, it's manipulative, or it's grabbing people, by grabbing their triggers or being aware of their psychological triggers. And so you're able to sort of just market your way into great success versus, trying to figure out another way to treat things. And so I think that, being able to take the edge off and let people understand it's okay, give yourself time to grow, I think is probably not a bad idea.
And take action, man. Take action. So something I teach people at WeShape when it comes to fitness, this applies for business too. Like, I call it the ABCs. And this is just so true for anything you do, right? It's take action. Nothing changes unless you take action. So that's like the first step, right? Take action on the basics. You don't have to jump to these black belt level things. In fact, most of those things are like the last 5%. Take action on the basics consistently. ABC. Take action on the basics consistently. And when it comes to business, there are so many things that people could be doing to improve their business that they don't do because they're chasing those high level things, those high level skills, right? A great example, Ryan, is people come to me a lot because we have a huge social media following. We've got about, I think, 7-point-something million followers across TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And those have been gotten organically over the last 4 years. So like, how did we do that? Take action on the basics consistently, post relentlessly. And so people say, how do we build social media so I can get more organic traffic and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's really simple. I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom right now. I want you to go post 1,000 videos across the 3 to 5 platforms that matter for your career. You don't have to make new content, post the same content across all those platforms, and then come back after you've made 1,000 videos and posted them. This is how many people have ever taken my advice. That's a big zero if you're not watching. It's a big fat zero because it's really hard. And then people are afraid to fail. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of whatever. But the amount you learn about your industry, about yourself, about the language that you can use to describe the things you're building or desire to build, right, along the way is huge. Because ultimately, then what do you get? You get hooks, you get language, you understand your customer, you feel more confident in being able to speak about this because you've practiced so much. It is not about making 100 perfect posts. It's about making 1,000 where 958 of them kind of sucked and 42 of them did pretty good. And maybe like out of those 42, like 10 of them really hit. And it's, again, this rhythm of GTMD I share with you, guess, test, measure, decide. That's what posting is. I guess that this piece of content is going to do something. I'm going to test it out. I measured it with views and engagement or maybe like calls to action, clicks or whatever. And then, oh, it failed. Great. Get back up to the plate and swing again. You think Babe Ruth was a great baseball player because he thought about hitting home runs all day long? Or did he step up to the plate and swing that damn bat over and over and over and over again and make little adjustments along the way? Human beings are designed to do this. We're designed to make little adjustments as we go, as we fall flat on our faces. Like, failure is the key to success, right? Taking those steps is the key. And so it's so important, I think, if people just realize, like, stop getting in your head about stuff and start taking the actions that you know you should be taking. And the more you feel like you're going to puke in your mouth and you're scared and you're nervous, that's probably the one you got to take today. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, get after it.
No, I love that. Well, and I think, just as you were saying it too, I'm going in my head, it's like, oh man, but people are just they're trying to buy likes. They're trying to do whatever. Like, they're not doing the work. No. And it just goes back to kind of what's become the theme of the show, which is, you've got to do the work. You have to put it in. There isn't a, get rich or a instant gratification version of this. Of course you can find some example of something that got posted and went viral and then somebody spun out a career or something, but that's definitely not the norm. It's for sure the exception. And so, so whether it's your business or whether just one facet of your business, like social media in your business, you obviously have to take the time and do the thing. And like, there's not really a hack for this. There's not a cheat, like you can do the work and you might, like I say, you might hit with some content or something, but it's like, but generally speaking, you can't fake it. So you either do it or you don't do it, and the results will either appear or they won't. So, and
you said something before too, like the flash in the pan, the quick buck, the quick weight loss, anything that's like short-lived or like quickly done is short-lived, right? Like the faster you rise, the faster you fall. The things that people see as success, the viral video that blows something up, well, guess what? That's yesterday's news, and that person never cultivated the skills to repeat that success, right? It's why 90% of lottery winners end up going broke or in debt, right? Because they never had the skills to manage that money in the first place. And so if you want to be an entrepreneur that lasts the test of time, you've got to put in the effort. You've got to chop wood and carry water on the basics, which frankly is like making content or advertising or writing stuff. It's doing that again in emails about things that you're doing. It's iterating on your customer journey and sales process, iterating on your product, and so you can create a better user experience. It's getting in touch with your customers and asking your customers questions so you can get more information from that. It's leading your team. It's refining your vision. It's just repeating that over and over and over and over and over again ad nauseum. And guess what's funny, about all this stuff? When it comes to fitness and the stuff that we do at WeShape, same thing. Instead of thinking negatively about yourself, all we try to do is teach you how to think positively about yourself with baby steps. Instead of focusing on how intensely you can work out so that you can sculpt your muscles and burn so many calories, we start focusing on teaching you how to move your body better in a gentle way so that you can feel better in your body. And it turns out if we do those things consistently, guess what? we build the tools necessary to feel good, have longevity, and feel good about ourselves in the process.
I love it. It's such a good point. In fact, I was going to follow up with something else, but I think that's probably a better spot to leave it. So let's do that. Hey, Tyler, let's take a quick minute and just, where can people track you down online if they want to learn more about your business, or if they want to talk to you or learn more about you in particular? Where can they find you?
Totally. Yeah. If you go to WeShape.com/eggs, we made a special link where you guys can try out WeShape for free for 2 weeks. We take you through a new client intake. So if you're somebody who's listening and you want to try a different approach to fitness, check that out. On our social medias, WeShape, and we have a podcast called the Feeling Lighter Podcast, where we talk about the psychological side of things, just to build more awareness around what it is that we're doing here. I'm all over the internet. So yes, come say hi, come join up in WeShape. I do live calls in there too. So if you have any physical questions or psychological questions, I'm happy to address them there too. And I don't talk as much about business anymore. I used to do a little bit of that stuff, but now I just keep my head down, stay focused, and try to build something great. So. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thanks so much, Tyler. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.